What do you say to the people? And this is a growing narrative that Jews are indigenous to this land and Palestinians are not. Maybe they're native, but they're not indigenous, and indigenous rights should grant them sovereignty over the entire land. I'm sure you've heard
Yeah,
that.
I think it's an interesting argument. When I bring together a group of Israelis and ask the Israelis in the room where they're from, you get from 50 different countries, and then you talk about indigenous people. We were indigenous here 2,000 years ago. I'm a new immigrant to this land. I immigrated here 41 years ago. My kids are native. My wife is native born, but her parents came from Iraq. I mean, every other Israeli comes from somewhere else. So we can claim that this is our ancestral land, that the story of our people is in the hilltops and the valleys of Judea and Samaria. I think there's no denying that. But to go from that to call us an indigenous people when we were basically out of this land for 2,000 years is quite difficult. Where the majority of Palestinians can trace their roots back to this land for generations. Of course, there are Palestinians who immigrated here at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. There are Palestinians with the name Masri, which means that they came from Egypt. And the famous Alami family in Jerusalem 500 years ago came from Morocco. And the Hijazi family came from the Hijaz, which is now Saudi Arabia or the Arabian Peninsula. And the Halabi family came from Halab in Syria. But these people have been here for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 500 years. I think it's difficult to claim that they are not indigenous people to this land. So I think it's kind of argument of whose is bigger, whose history was first. We claim that we were here first. King David, they claim that King David is a Muslim prophet. And then the Jews come along and say, but Islam didn't even exist there. But they say, but God created Islam as part of a process of the creation of the world. God knew that Muhammad was going to be the last prophet when Abraham was here, when Isaac was here. And Abraham is the father of the Muslim people too. So this kind of argument just goes on and on. The Palestinians in their textbooks claim that the Canaanite people were the ancestors of the Palestinians, so that they claim that they were here first. I think it's an absurd argument. What we need to say is that between the river and the sea, there are almost equal numbers of Jews and Palestinians, almost equal numbers, and we're all here. And I like what the late Rabbi Menachem Froman used to say, was that rather than saying this land belongs to us, meaning us Israelis or us Palestinians, we belong to this land. We all belong to this land. I personally would not like to live in this land if there were no Palestinians here. I live in Jerusalem. One of the things I love about Jerusalem is that there's a Palestinian part of Jerusalem also. It's part of my culture. It's part of my society. It's part of where I belong and how I exist in this mosaic of a city that has so many traditions and ethnicities and nationalities and religions and languages. This is part of who we are and what we are in this land.